Commissioner Gardner, we're just doing a mic check to get started. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, fantastic. We can hear you as well. All right, welcome this afternoon to our Board of County Commission meeting. And as always, we start with a prayer, reading, or thought, and the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a volunteer, Chaplain Walton, will lead us in the prayer, reading, or thought. Is there anybody who would volunteer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you.
Let's pray together. Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful to have a new year to begin and to use to do more of your will and more of the things that are needed in our community. And Father, we pray at this time that you'll forgive us for anything that we've done that would slow this process down. Father, as we go forward today, we pray for your wisdom. We pray for brotherhood and sisterhood in this valley, that we can all work together to do what is needed, what your will is, what is necessary. Thank you, Father, for the freedom to do this, and we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for justice for all.
Thank you, Craig. And thank you, Linda. All right. For the recognition of the Employee of the Month, could we have Karen Allen come forward?
Everyone. Hi.
I was looking back there because I saw everybody starting to walk in. Yeah?
That's why you made me sit over there.
Well, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
This is what was presented and given to us to read for you from it says in the bottom, I'm just going to preface this, from the entire HR staff. So I don't know if there's influence one way or the other from different individuals. They're all, yeah.
Got it.
And I'll give this to you so you can look at fingerprints later or anything on it.
Okay. Good.
Okay, it is our great pleasure to nominate Karen Allen for Employee of the Month. From the time she was hired 6 years ago, Karen has brought with her excellent skills and experience along with a caring, can-do attitude and creative energy to the job. Since joining the HR team, she has worked in or assisted every HR process from the front desk to benefits, recruitment, job classification and description, training, and other duties as assigned. Karen stands out in her office as an ultimate team player. She exhibits concerns for the entire HR team. She is always aware of how individuals in her office are doing. Now you can't go after them. She cannot bear the possibility that any person feels left out. If someone is
That may change.
If someone is experiencing hardship or is not feeling well, Karen is always there to offer kind word, concern, and treats or gifts. She makes sure that office staff are especially recognized on their birthdays and other special occasions, always contributing to a positive office environment. We have come to know Karen as a deeply motivated team member. She is excellent, creative, and egoless when it comes to problem solving. She helps whenever there is a need and does not require recognition, except for on days like today. When things go wrong, Karen offers immediate assistance in order to sort things out to mediate a conflict. Karen always rises to any challenge. Karen was hired as a personnel technician. However, when Workday was installed and implemented, Karen, along with her regular duties, was able to step into the role of benefit manager and process benefits for all Utah County employees. Most recently, she stepped in to assist the transfer of employees working in DDAP to Wasatch says mental health, but that's actually Wasatch behavioral health now. Recently, new challenges have arisen because of increased demands in our recruiters. In recruiters, Karen has managed to assist in the hiring of almost 300 employees in a single year. Well done. That's great. This past year, with the presidential and other elections and clerk auditor's office requiring assistance in staffing poll workers, the solution was to have several open house new hire enrollments. Karen made herself available to participate in these after-hour events. Karen has particularly shined as she has led the effort to assist in the health department in the recruiting of nurses and other staff during the COVID-19, expending extra time and effort to get necessary staffing in place for dispensing vaccines. In addition to her recruiting responsibilities, she has also recently taken on workers' compensation claims, ensuring the county employees get claims processed quickly and effectively. Finally, Karen has spearheaded the development of a new workday-based performance appraisal streamlining process. This has eliminated the need for paper appraisals and to be printed or signed. Karen has also developed a training program for all departments to ensure that supervisors will be able to use the process effectively. And now this last sentence is an announcement. The training will be finished by the end of April, and the new appraisal process will go live in all departments in May 1st.
Oh. Again, I guess I better work on that.
She did not know that, huh?
I didn't know that.
Well, that's what it says. Remember, the entire HR team, staff wrote this.
Okay.
So now you have to lean on them, too, to help you. Karen is, in so many ways, an exemplary Utah County employee, and we are proud to work with her and endorse her as Utah County Employee of the Month.
Thank you.
So
That makes me
You're-
sound really good. Wow.
you can frame it. You can use it. Anything that you'd like to
I
comment on?
absolutely love working for the county. I love COVID for the fact that it has grown my relationships with the health department and Eric and his team and the clerk auditor's office. I've really gotten to see how they work and appreciate all their hard work, and it's my pleasure to help them out through this time.
Fantastic.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll give you these.
Am I red yet? A little bit. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, did you hear that? He said I could take the rest of the year off. Can I get that in writing?
We'll just make sure the funds come out of his office.
Okay.
All right.
That's fun.
All right. Well, the exciting part of the meeting's over with. Now we'll move on to business. No, I shouldn't say that. There's some people here with presentations. So we do have two work session items. The first one is a presentation on Utah Lake by Ben Abbott, Craig Christensen. So thank you for coming. We did talk a little bit about that it'll probably be about 15 or so minutes. Hopefully we can stay within that time frame. We'll let Alice kind of keep track of that. Is that all right, Alice? And go ahead. The podium's yours.
My name is Craig Christensen. I'm Executive Director of Conserve Utah Valley. And we're very concerned about a real estate project that is slated to go in the middle of the lake. About to unfold on the lake is a mistake we think of just huge proportions. So the reason we come here today is we're asking for your leadership in helping to prevent that from happening. And to do that, we're asking you to consider the process that we'd like to see happen. Representative Kevin Stratton is proposing an amendment to House Bill 272, which actually made this real estate project possible 4 years ago. And so he's currently actually proposing some amendments to that to curb some of the concerns we have. Ben, who is a professor, will talk a little bit about the ecological aspects of this. What we would ask of this commission, realize it's not your purview to oversee the state legislature, and the lake is your purview, just like it's mine. What we would ask is leadership in speaking up. 2 cities have done so far. Last night, the Provo City Council voted unanimously in a joint resolution, including the mayor, to ask for amendments to this bill to prevent some of the things that Ben is going to talk about. American Fork has also, a couple of nights ago, agreed unanimously to draft up a similar resolution, and we think other cities will follow. We think it would be a tremendous thing for the commissioners to consider as well. So let me introduce Ben Abbott, who is a great spokesman and, like many of us, lover of Utah Lake, to speak about some of the concerns we have.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks, commissioners, for taking the time and allowing us to speak to you today. I'm a professor of aquatic ecology at Brigham Young University, just a baby professor. I've only been there for a few years now, but I grew up here in the Valley, and like many of those here, grew up interacting with Utah Lake. And so in just a few minutes, I'm going to give you a 20,000-year overview of what has happened at Utah Lake. And this is research that was put together this summer as part of the Utah Lake Symposium. And so all of the details and references are available at utahlake.byu.edu. There's an article there that's a summary of that, and you can also see the individual presentations. More recently, the group that's led by Craig and others, organized by Conserve Utah Valley, is called the Utah Lake Conservation Coalition. And their website is don'tpaveutahlake.org, and you can find details more on the legal side there. So before I start boring you, flapping my gums, I just wondered, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of Utah Lake? And this is open, if it's permitted to anybody in the room. You can just shout it out.
Sailing.
Saline. Algae.
History.
History. Carp. Those are all words that...
Phragmites.
What was? Oh, Phragmites. You're
yes.
getting the technical term here. Lots of new species and lots of old ones. I love this picture of Utah Lake, and it really does show this is the heart of Utah County. It's one of the largest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi. It's a keystone ecosystem, not only for Utah County, but for the whole North American continent. 35 million birds move through the Utah Lake system as part of the Pacific Flyway. 10 million fish live inside the Utah Lake ecosystem. And unless you're kind of a specialist, it may be lost a little bit on you what the lake does for us. So here are just 7 points why the lake matters. It's very important to local climate. It regulates our extremes in the summertime. It cools things off. It also warms things up in the winter. Maybe more importantly, it's an important source of precipitation. The water that evaporates from Utah Lake is an important source of snowfall and rain. Utah Lake is also used by hundreds of water users in Utah County and north of where we are through the Jordan River corridor. As I mentioned, it's crucial habitat for millions of individuals and over 1,000 species. It provides extremely valuable removal of nutrients. So we don't have to treat our water to the same level that, for example, communities in the Great Lakes do, where they have to have tertiary and quaternary treatment to remove every trace of nutrient. The lake removes much of that for us. It also protects air quality. At the Great Salt Lake Summit this morning, there were representatives from LA County talking about Owens Lake, which is a similar lake to Utah Lake that was poorly managed. It dried up, and they have spent $3 billion in dust abatement to try to maintain their air quality. Also, world-class recreation and views. And then finally, spiritual and cultural significance. As you mentioned, Commissioner, there's history in Utah Lake, and I'll talk about that just a little bit here. 15,000 years ago, we would have been under 400 feet of water. Lake Bonneville covered this area. And both the Great Salt Lake and Utah Lake are remnants of that ancient inland sea. That's why both of these lakes are so flat on the bottom. They're very shallow and wide because of those deposits from Lake Bonneville. Now, the indigenous history of this area goes back at least 20,000 years. Most recently, the Timpanogos Nation was the indigenous group of tribes, Eastern Shoshone, that were in the area when the Mormon pioneers arrived in Utah County in 1850. And Utah Lake played a pivotal role for those early Mormon pioneers. In 1854 and 55, there were crop failures. And it was the harvest of the June sucker that were used not only for the pioneers in this valley, but throughout all of the Mormon colonies in the Western territories at that time. Now, when Utah became a state in 1896, just before that was when the carp were introduced. That was actually an intentional introduction, part of a government program to restock lakes that had been overfished. When Utah became a state, the lands underneath Utah Lake, as well as all of the lake beds in the state, became sovereign lands that were constitutionally, under the equal footing doctrine, managed by the state of Utah. And that I'll talk about, that's been challenged since then. Now, after it became a state, Utah Lake was a cultural center. There were resorts all around the lake. This is the USS Showboat, a dance boat that used to go out on the lake. However, perhaps the darkest time for Utah Lake was in the 1930s. During the Dust Bowl, we had a drought that was actually less severe than what we're living through now. However, we didn't have the management that we currently have. And so almost all of the water to Utah Lake was diverted by water users upstream, and the lake ended up drying out. The governor declared a state of emergency. It created economic havoc. Thankfully, since that time, very careful water regulations been put in place. Now, in the 1970s, the federal government put its eye on Utah Lake and wanted to drill for oil. This was during the oil crisis. And of course, this is not a real picture. I doctored it up with an oil rig out there. The state, local leaders and the state took the federal government to court and ended up winning that in a U.S. Supreme Court decision. And that defended the right. Utah Lake should be held in public trust, like all of the lakes in Utah, permanently for the benefit of the people of Utah, present and future. Now, in the 1970s, we now have research that shows the lake underwent a state change. It used to be dominated by emergent vegetation, like you see on the left here, and it transitioned over into primarily an algal-dominated system. Now, the lake has always been relatively cloudy because of natural chemical processes, but this was a change that was a combination of diversion of water flows and the adding of nutrients, primarily from wastewater, but some from agriculture as well. Very common. Water bodies all over the U.S. were experiencing similar transitions during this time period. That's part of the reason why in 1972 the Clean Water Act was passed, not just for Utah Lake, but for water bodies around the country. And since that time, we have been in a state of ecological restoration. Hundreds of projects have been put in place that have yielded measurable progress in Utah Lake. Actually, I'll just highlight the one on the bottom. The Utah Lake Commission and June Sucker Recovery Program has removed 123 blue whales worth of carp from Utah Lake since it started. Ultimately, the biomass has been reduced by about 80%, and that's where they're aiming to maintain it now. So if I were to summarize the current status from a scientific perspective, here are just 4 points. Habitat and biodiversity are increasing thanks to these restoration projects. In 2021, the June sucker was downlisted. This is a national achievement. A species that was on the brink of extinction now has a large reproducing population. Water flow to the lake has been increased because of collaborative agreements with water users, especially farmers upstream in Spanish Fork watershed and Provo River watershed. Algal bloom intensity, extent, and frequency are decreasing for the lake as a whole, though there are still problem areas, particularly Provo Bay. And the public is becoming more aware of the lake, though I put a one thumb up, one thumb down. There still are widespread misconceptions about what Utah Lake is and what it could be.
I love the picture, by the way.
This is Jared Tamez, and the sailing. I didn't put that in there specifically
Looks like
for
a
you,
boat that I've
Commissioner
sailed
Lee,
on,
but
so
this
yeah.
could be you out on the lake. Anybody who wants a picture of Utah Lake, go to the Utah Lake Photography Club on Facebook or on Instagram. Every single day, gorgeous photos of the lake are posted there. I won't get too much into the details. Again, go to utahlake.byu.edu. But this is showing on the left side Utah Lake level, which has gone up and down because of natural fluctuation, and then 1934, that drying out period. But compare that to the Great Salt Lake, which hasn't had the same level of coordinated protection, where you see a very strong decline. And we broke the record for the lowest level this year. Harmful algal bloom status is better than most water bodies in the nation, and even in Utah, it's right there in the middle. Here's a graph that shows blue areas of the lake are getting better as far as algal blooms are concerned. The green areas of the lake are having more algal blooms. So see, it's kind of a story of two lakes here. So more work to do, but we're on a good trajectory. Also, most people don't understand, most of the lake bed is in very good shape. These are two independent studies that took lake cores from all over with the lake sediment. They found that most of the lake has background levels of nutrients. So we don't need to dredge the lake. Maybe some targeted dredging on the northern part and in Provo Bay, but overall the lake sediment's in good shape. And again, June sucker downlisted. And it's really encouraging to see the level of attention and awareness. In the governor's proposed budget, $25 million was earmarked. Now, we all know the governor's budget doesn't mean anything, but it does signal some of the priorities. And so hopefully the legislature will support that. And the Utah Lake Commission has been doing outreach and education on Utah Lake. So lots of things are going in a good direction. In 2017, however, this LLC, Lake Restoration Solutions, submitted a proposal to FFSL that would privatize the lake bed and cover about a fifth of the lake in private islands. This is a rendering from their proposal that you can still find on FFSL. Now, I understand it's been updated, but this is the only one that's publicly available. Now, that was impossible. Remember the equal footing and public trust doctrine, you can't privatize the lake. So they approached the legislature and found two sponsors for these Utah Lake amendments, HB 272 in 2018. And that created an alternative pathway. It changed the protection for Utah Lake and allowed, here's just a short, it's a very short piece of legislation, but here are the two parts, some general provisions, and then what it actually changes is on the right side, part 2. It allows the Legislative Management Committee to authorize FFSL to dispose of state land in and around Utah Lake in exchange for comprehensive restoration. Now, this was, at the time, it kind of went under the radar, and there wasn't much attention given. However, this is very concerning because it wasn't clear, did the restoration have to happen before the transfer took place? That's not required by this law. So it created a potential loophole where a committee could transfer a large portion of Utah Lake. Are you telling me 4? Okay, great. And then when they're evaluating proposals, they should look at these 3 criteria: the revenue for local and state government, state property, and timetable and feasibility of the project. Right away, this company moved forward in this development. This is just some news coverage at the time. You can still find, I encourage you, look at their own proposal. Don't take my word for it. But this is the executive summary on the left-hand side, and then my summary on the right. It's a for-profit venture. They're saying they're going to dredge the entire lake bed and take that dredged sediment and build this archipelago of islands. They're promising to solve all of the lake's problems at no cost to taxpayers. This would be the largest land transfer from the people of Utah in state history. Nothing like this has been done. For context, these islands would be 8 times larger than any dredged island project anywhere in the world, not only in Utah, but anywhere in the world. And almost 400 times larger than any freshwater dredging project. Nothing like this has been done. It's not aligned with ecological restoration principles. They claim to have $6.5 billion in private investments. However, they went public on the SEC and only raised $200,000 a couple of years ago. However, we found out that in 2021, the state legislature, through the governor's office, granted them a $10 million loan guarantee, which allowed them to start advertising. They hired a PR firm and then are starting the permitting process. They also submitted last year a pre-proposal to the EPA asking for $893 million of federal loans. However, they weren't invited to submit a full proposal. So that was disappointing because they had said they would do this at no cost to taxpayers, and yet already taxpayer money is being used to subsidize the project. So from an ecological perspective, here are the risks associated with this project. It changes the characteristics of the lake that are central to its recovery and resilience. They are saying they're going to change the natural cloudiness. That currently protects us from algal blooms. Also, they will deepen the lake. However, the shallowness of the lake currently means that you don't have fish kills when there is an algal bloom. In deep lakes, you have hypoxic zones, dead zones that form. So you also, if you deepen the lake, you could have release of natural things from the sediment that could cause water quality problems. It would reduce evaporation, that's the source of our precipitation, and also helps remove nutrients. And then most important to me, as someone from Utah Valley, it goes contrary to all of our ancestors who have taken their stewardship of Utah Lake seriously. And then finally, the county has been very careful in thinking about growth in the future. And this completely would disrupt and alter any plans for development with multiple causeways and a city of 200 to 500,000 people in the center of Utah Lake. Also a red flag, Robert Scott, their chief design director, was one of the leads in these Dubai islands, the Palm Jumeirah and Palm Dara. And these islands were an enormous failure. Economically, they ended up $600 billion in debt. They were bailed out by the Dubai government. They caused massive environmental issues, including causing algal blooms and causing erosion, alteration, human rights abuses, using forced labor to complete this. And the Utah Lake Islands would be 14 times larger than these failed projects in Dubai, despite the fact that they had the funding of the sheiks of Dubai behind them. So more than 100 experts, environmental scientists, managers, and lawyers have come out in opposition to this project. This is covered in the Daily Herald. And then just last night, the Provo City Council and Mayor passed a resolution calling on the state legislature to use science-based conservative restoration principles when dealing with Utah Lake, and calling for amendments of this law that really put Utah Lake on different standing than other water bodies in Utah. And then this Tuesday, Representative Stratton, as Craig mentioned, is going to be hosting a Utah Lake Summit at UVU. Everyone's invited. They'll be going over some of the legislative changes they're talking about. And I'll just leave that here because I think I've exhausted my 4 minutes. These are some recommendations, but thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. And we take some questions? Absolutely. Maybe to start with, thanks for coming. Obviously, I invite you to come and put this on as a discussion. It's an important discussion for our county because it does affect all of us. And where it stands, and as commissioners, we realize that we have no standing in this on a legal perspective or anything of that nature. But I think it's an important discussion to have as things move along. One of the questions I have, not necessarily on your presentation, which I think is well done, the question comes out if we're looking at because there's two sides, and I'll probably have the other side come and do a presentation as well. I think that's only fair to do. But I've found through the process that if the two sides will communicate and talk, and we're all claiming that we love Utah Lake and we want the best for Utah Lake and we want it to be scientific and fact-filled, not feelings and emotion-filled, and you have expertise, and many others have expertise as well when it comes to this. I don't, and so I have to get information so that I can digest it that way. Are you willing to meet with them on a collaborative basis and find out what is best?
Absolutely. We've reached out to them, invited them to do that. We think that would be a wonderful outcome. So far, they haven't taken us up on that invitation, but if they would accept your invitation, we would love to have a public panel that could bring a lot of clarity to what's going on.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Any questions?
It could be public, but it could also be private initially.
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of sort out where each side stands, and we could host that maybe here at the ballroom or something of that nature.
We would be happy to participate in whatever way. And likewise, I'm not the only expert on this. Feel free, look at that whole list and invite whoever you'd like.
Yeah. Okay. This is kind of a work session. Richard, Bryce, do you have any thoughts or comments as well? I'm looking at them because they do public works and our community development. So if you have any, or anybody else, it's kind of open for a. Come on up here, if you would.
Part of what is concerning to me as a citizen is the stealth freight train that this has been. Now, most people that I talk to, they look at me like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. Like, come on, that's not really going to happen. And the governor's office has guaranteed $10 million of loans, for them to actually make this happen. So this is it's happening. The concern we have is what you're talking about, is there isn't discussion about it. We keep asking for information. We don't get information. Our concern is about the science-based aspect of restoration, that this needs to be more, it's billed as restoration project. It feels more real estate project. And so some discussion, and especially some open discussion where there's transparency, I think would be helpful for everyone.
So that's a good point, and maybe I can ask this question. If there is some scientific restoration project that can be done on the lake that becomes advantageous for the lake and for us as a community here, even if it is building some islands and doing something like that, you'd be okay with that?
Well, part of the challenge is how you go about that. And the process of dredging the lake, killing it, killing all the fish, restocking it, man-made islands, and then artificial bubblers and artificial man-made systems, it seems like we're heading the wrong direction after years and years of actually healthy restoration where it kind of takes care of itself. So I think what you'll find is there would be a difference of opinion in terms of what restoration is and also what the desired outcome is. My desired outcome would be, let's keep the mountains as natural as they can be and the lake as natural as they can be. We don't need to redo to accommodate the most expensive real estate in the country.
And I just respond back a little bit more directly. We're not in lockstep, but absolutely, we should follow whatever the best practices are in ecological restoration. And so right now, the state has funded a multi-million-dollar Utah Lake water quality study that is in the process of, they brought in experts from all over the country and all over the world. There's some international experts there. They'll have a whole list of recommended actions for what we could do to make sure that Utah Lake continues getting better. We should follow that. I can't say from the front end what the best option is going to be. We need to look at that evidence, carefully evaluate it. But this project has claimed clearly non-scientific things, that Utah Lake is dying and that it's getting worse. If we don't do something drastic, it's going to be a huge mess. That's undermining the real restoration work we're trying to do, including restoring people's relationship with Utah Lake, because they're spreading this misinformation. So from a research and education perspective, I'm concerned already. They're already doing damage because of that lack of being willing to come forward and publicly talk about what their claims. Bring the science to the table.
Right. And I don't know what it is, and I can't speculate if it's, one way or the other. I've done some not restoration on lakes, but maybe restoration on some cars or restoration on some other things. And there's different paths, to get there. But overall, we have to identify what is the best for not just our area, but for the lake and for, everything that we're trying to balance in there. And there can be debate back and forth on what that is. But I think your point is that it should be at the best information that we have on a scientific basis so that it does produce something in the end that is beneficial.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and this is something as critical as Utah Lake. Shouldn't be an urgent thing that we just go and develop. Usually these types of things take years and years and a decade of analysis. And again, this feels like a stealth freight train. And that's what most people are objecting to. So your comment about let's create transparency, let's talk to both sides, I think it's a great idea. That's because that's one of the key issues I think that people are having an allergic reaction to, is because if you build it first and it doesn't work, boy, that's a problem that all of us pick up the problems for a long time. Mm-hmm. And these islands have a history of dissolving back into the water. So it's a concern.
Yeah. None of us want a half project that falls into bankruptcy. Right. Exactly. We don't want that. We don't want problems down the road with it, but we do want to be careful, make sure and do it the best way.
So the website I saw on one of their slides is utahlake.byu.com. That has all the detailed information that you just presented.
Yeah, utahlake.byu.edu.
EDU, excuse me.
Yeah, and there's an article that is, it's science-based, but we wrote it to be non-technical. And then it's followed up by over 80 references of the peer-reviewed and technical reports that you can dig into to evaluate if we had a fair representation of the science.
I'll go there, but would you send me the slides or send us
Absolutely.
the slides?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think just to summarize, we're not asking you to take sides. We're asking you to take leadership in terms of helping this discussion, creating the kind of transparency that you were just talking about. That will go a long way to helping people make really good choices about what should be happening with the Utah Lake.
All right.
And the last thing that I forgot to mention, we've spoken with both Representative McKell, now Senator McKell, and Senator Henderson, now Lieutenant Governor Henderson, about this. And it's not at all about, oh, how did you pass this horrible law? Legislation's complicated. And both of them recognized, yeah, there likely are changes that we need to make. So we've found a lot of willingness in the state legislature. But that would be another request. I'm not a political person, but in any of your conversations, if you'd be willing to ask or bring this up when you're talking with legislators and say, this is important to Utah County, that'd be much appreciated.
You know, I think that's a really important point because I remember when the June Sucker projects first started and it was all hellfire. I mean, it just seemed like everything was falling apart, right? Yep. But I think the ability to have conversations and to stick at it and to talk about it and to compromise and to work back and forth was so critical to that project because we had residents upset, we had cities upset, we had federal delegation working on it, we had, you know, and it was just all jumbled there for a while. And it feels like that a little bit right now, you know, kind of with what this is. But that project is going to turn out, it's still in the process, but it's going to be fantastic.
Yes.
There's a lot of good things that are going on with that project now, but it did not end where it started.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the key. And I think conversation is the key, and you know, a willingness to come and say, "What if?" and hey, let's see what we can do. What's best.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
you.
both. Thanks.
Now you can stay for our next. Well, it looks like you're headed out.
I think we're
Our next work session item is talking about our capital improvements plan. So we'll turn that over to Rudy.
Well, we've been working for many months now on getting the capital improvements program and capital improvements plan set up for the 2022, 23, and 24, which is, there's two parts. The capital improvements program is a 10-year outlook on where we're going with capital projects, whereas the capital improvement plan is actually the first 3 years of that plan, which would be 22 through 24. And for that, we try to get the items fixed for that first 3 years and the funding for those to be dedicated to that so that we can have that money in the capital improvements plan so that we can pay for those projects going forward. We've gone through several iterations. We had a work session with this.
Can I jump in?
You bet.
So, I mean, I know we allocate that out there, but we actually only fully fund 1 year. So that the year that we're in.
That's what we budget 1 year.
Right.
But we've been the plan when we set up. The idea was to put that money into the CIP fund for that, so we have it for the whole 3 year period's covered. But we budget for 1 year at a time. Correct. Yes. So we met with the commission in November and asked for some guidance and direction on where the commission would like to go with regards to these projects, and we're not able to accomplish much in the way of what projects were being funded. However, we did get some instruction that the commission intended to have. They wanted us to have a schedule of a better schedule of when these projects might be occurring. So the timeline for the projects, and I think that's something that Commissioner Lee has been very adamant that we have. And so we come back with that. We put that together in this. So we've also gone and looked at what was.
That's this one?
Yeah, there are two pieces. You're correct, yes. So there are two big schedules here. I tried to make it so we could read it a little bit better.
Thank you.
I mean, it's still a little bit hard. The first one that doesn't have all of the color shading in here is the actual projects, and this we tried to plan them out in the timeline. Okay, and it's not 100% complete, but it's a good stab at things. And as we were having a slight, little discussion before the meeting, when we set this timeline, things change. And so, but what we want to do is get them programmed into the place where we think that they're going to be. And the closer that the projects are to being commenced, we will have a better idea of the actual timeline for those. Because right now, we can look at the 2024 projects, and we couldn't tell you whether they're going to happen in January or December, because it's just too much that needs to be happening. We just know that we want to do those projects. Now, the emphasis that we've looked at is that if these projects can be funded by ARPA, we have a time frame in there that we need to get those, what do they say, obligated by 2024, which obligated, it doesn't specify exactly, I don't think, what obligated means, but basically we need to have contracts let. And we need award contracts and have these actually moving forward in the process. So if there's anything that is ARPA eligible, we would like to push that forward. Now, I got a list from the ARPA team, from Peter Brown, and I started going through that list of all of the items that have actually been approved. And I think there's a lot of these projects out here that have a green listing, which means that they are viable, and everybody believes that they would be acceptable under ARPA regulations. But there are only a handful of these that are actually been approved to move forward with at least on the schedule that I received. And the ones that primarily for that are the admin building. And of those projects on here, all of them have been approved by the commission except one, which is electrical upgrades that are needed in order to complete the HVAC, the HVAC replacement process. So I think that's something that the commissioners might want to look at and determine whether we want to go forward with it. Because, we have to do the electrical upgrades in order to get the whole system to work properly. So everything else on the HVAC project has been green coded and approved by the commission except for that one line. So
No, that's interesting, and it'll be good follow-up for us in our conversations, because I was under the impression that we had approved the projects on this building for some time.
yeah.
And so knowing that one, maybe, I don't know how that circled out, but somehow that might have circled out of it. But that's why I think the plan is so nice to have, that we can check and follow.
Yeah, and we're moving forward with the assumption that is going to be approved because it's in the program. We've actually programmed that out for 2022 start date. We'll just need the commission's formal, approval, whatever the process is now. I know it's changed a few times, but we should get that documented that's approved, because I don't think there's any question. I think everybody believed that everything was approved. It's just this one line sticking out there.
What line is that on?
If you look at on that, it's actually line on the
On the front page? Is
the
that-
front page. It's like this in the top section.
Oh, right there, the second one up from the bottom.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the electrical upgrade. So we'll need to get that done, and if that does get approved, then I think some of that's out in 2028 will be moving forward into the. Is that correct, Richard? Yeah. So that money that's out there a little bit further out, we would be bringing that in to get that done under the ARPA, so we have it in the ARPA timeframe.
Okay.
Now, with regards to all of the other projects, there are some of the yellow projects that.
Oh, so, sorry. to
Go
jump in.
ahead. No.
So I was just picking up on your comment. So originally that was scheduled out for 2028,
Yes.
but because we're looking at the,
There's two.
there's two
to it.
pieces to it? Okay.
Basically half the building at a time. That's why you have one in.
I'll get, don't worry about it.
One in 2022 and one in
22 and one in
2028.
28, but half of the building at a time.
So it's a total of 500,000.
Correct. But if we do determine it's ARPA eligible, we'd pull that 2028 one in tighter
Yeah.
and do it all within that ARPA timeframe.
Because this is critical in the short time frame that we have.
Yes.
Because some of these projects will take a longer runway to get done,
Correct.
going through all the stages to get done. We can't wait till 2024 and say, let's start this, even though it's an obligation, but it would really look screwy if we're obligating too much at the end for years out. Okay.
And we went through, and a lot of these things that are, ARPA eligible, they're things that we had already decided were necessary for the county. Now, since we approved the 2021 CIP, there have been a few things that have come up because of the ARPA guidelines. There are some things that we believe that we've been kind of thinking about needed to be done, but hadn't really risen to be on the project listing, such as the fencing over at the jail and the medical wing over at the jail, and things like that hadn't originally been on there, but now are in the works. So we, as those things,
Fencing you have in here,
it is in here. Yes,
that one's been approved.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying. These are things that were approved in 2021, but they weren't formally included in the CIP plan. So we want
so
to,
you had to move them
we
in.
want to bring those into
got
the
it.
CIP
Okay.
plan.
And that's in this one here.
Yeah, and if we, it's actually in the one that has mostly white on the front. I asked Samantha after we were done, after she did this, I said, oh, maybe we should put some different colors on there to make it a little bit more readable. And
Colors are overrated.
well, I meant so it's a little bit easier for you to be able to, follow for all people who follow through.
I just say that just for some purposes. I'm colorblind, so that's why
Yeah.
I say colors are overrated.
And that's why we didn't realize that until yesterday. And I said, oh, maybe we could change this because we want to make it more easy for you. And, not only you, but for any members of the public that may see this document that would want to be able to see it as well. So, so there are things in here like that we have put in this that weren't originally approved. Now, ideally, what we would do is we would come back mid-year and have an amendment to the CIP plan, the current CIP plan, which didn't happen in 2021, but theoretically in 2022 we would come back sometime later if there are some items like that jumped onto the forefront here. So what we want to do today is have a discussion with you on, we understand that you cannot approve projects on the CIP. If we tried to do that, Dave would get right after us because he knows exactly that. And we all know that. What we're trying to get is a little bit of guidance and what your thoughts are on this scheduling, the way that we've started to set it up in here. Basically, we've set it up with a few different about 5 different type of milestones in there and kind of using that for a scheduling guideline. And what we want to do is figure out if we're on track with things and also identify possibly some of the items in here that are on our CIP list but are not necessarily approved for ARPA. We have some of the yellow items that have received 2 commissioner approvals, and there are a couple of others that have 3, and all of those that have 3, we've ensured that they're on the CIP plan. If they're on the CIP plan and we don't have the ARPA approval for those, then they'll have to be paid for out of general county, funds, which is okay. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, 2 approvals is a move forward no matter
Correct.
whose it is.
Yeah.
What happens, though, is sometimes one commissioner will want more information.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it's a yes or no. It's just that a commissioner is still seeking more information on it, and then the other 2 commissioners say, we're good with it. So it moves.
Yeah.
Even though that one commissioner is looking for more
Yeah,
information.
understood.
Yeah.
It's not to point fingers at somebody saying you're holding it back. No,
Yeah.
I understand exactly. That's exactly what it is. Just like our discussion before this one. You got to have more information to make good decisions, right?
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to work with the commissioners to make sure that we're meeting what the county's requirements are in here. So
can I ask you big questions first, and
You
maybe
bet.
we can come down? So, have you got this broken out in totals? I'm trying to find I find some
Yeah,
totals
we
here.
do. Actually-
I have one here at the end that says $98 million.
Yeah,
This is the total for the 10 years, I'm assuming.
Well, the totals for the 10 years are on the right-hand column, and there is a page in here. So we separated this out. So basically, the first 2.5 pages are things that are primarily in the years 1 through 3. After that, we split it out, and that's primarily years four. After that, it's the out years. However, I did notice that a few of these things have changed, and we've got some of the 1 to 3 years are actually in the second section that starts on page 3.
So maybe I can ask, so I'm looking at, on this, the one without the colors, the third page in, and the line says total capital improvement plan projects next 3 years.
Yes.
And then it has, and then there's a separation for capital improvement total. I'm going to assume that that's the
47 million.
That's the $47 million
Correct.
for those 3 years.
Correct.
And then it continues on and goes all the way out to the total for the 10 years.
Yeah, and once we get into years 4 through 10, the projects are a little bit more nebulous.
Right.
There are things that we believe need to be done, but maybe they haven't been spec'd out. We don't know the extent of the project. We don't know the timing, things like that.
But the numbers, the dollar numbers that are in there have a total, but there's nothing above them that has, probably because you don't have enough paper to do it, because it may cross over. I'm assuming, because say for instance on 2025, it has $610,000 in that year, and I'm sure those other add up to the 98 million total on the
Yeah,
end.
so if you go, so each one of those sections has subtotals for it. So that would be the totals for 2025 for all the sections up above it. And if you add the 47 million to all those ones for years 4 through 10, the total is 98,700,000.
So I guess the big question is if we were to expand the spreadsheet all the way out, we'd probably see where the 610 come from. But because they're not 610 with projects that we have currently listed, you're seeing zeros on
No,
it.
those are on pages 1 and 2. So there's some items in line 20, in column 25 that are in lines on page 1 and 2. There's $490,000
Oh, okay, I
down
see it.
towards
I
the
see it
bottom.
now.
So
Okay.
that's how that's coming. Those are just
Okay.
subtotaling all the way down from up above.
And the
From
next 3
all
years,
the way up above.
and the
Yeah.
next 3 years includes 22 then.
Correct. It's in 21.
Got it. I see it now.
So 21 isn't we put 21 on here for reference purposes only because it's not part of the 22 plan. So it's really only 22 through 24 is the CIP total. And then for the capital improvement program for the whole 10-year outlook, it's the 98 million, which may or may not come to pass. We know that, I mean, some of that in here, we bandied about what we should do with this building. Should we put something on the front here? Should we renovate the whole thing, build a new building? There's a lot of things that are still, in concept out there, but not really determine what we really want to do with things and where we want to go with them. And so that's the kind of stuff that would be in the years 4 through 10,
Okay.
as well as some things that maybe we know that, like there might be something that's at the end of its useful life, like a roof, and so we know it's going to happen in 24 or it's going to happen in 28 or 29. We'll plug it in for that point out there. Mm-hmm. Because the whole point is we're trying to make sure this building is how old now? 35 years old, and a lot of the systems within this building probably don't have a 35-year lifespan on them, and yet we have not been putting the money or the capital towards fixing those things. So we're trying to make it so systematically we're taking care of the county's assets as well as constructing new ones that are out there.
No, this outline has been very, very helpful, Rudy. It clears up a lot of things that we have talked about, and just it's concise and makes it far easier to follow.
Can we get this in electronic form to us?
Absolutely.
Too? Okay.
Be happy to send it to you. I mean,
I'm glad you expanded it, but
and we actually cut some things out to make it fit on a page. Alice asked me yesterday, "Are you going to have an overhead to view?" And I says, "No. If we put this up there, nobody would be able to see it.
you'll be able to read it.
I mean, you couldn't read it.
I need to have my reading glasses
For
to read
sure.
what we have now.
It is pretty tiny, and there's more stuff on, and we're stuck between this thing of wanting to provide enough information, but also have it in a concise format that we can put things in. One thing that we've done, we changed a little bit the format from last year. This one splits it out by major project, basically by buildings. So like we have a section for admin building, we have for a conference center, for the countywide stuff and infrastructure. So we split it out into types like that. HJB has its own own set in, courthouse, everything, sheriff's, the security center and all that. So we tried to make it so that you can easily see what area it's actually impacting.
And so there's some it wouldn't be considered low out there because they said they're about out of population. They're getting to the point where they have state mandate. They got to have additional wells. So I wouldn't say that's low, but
Yeah. And see, that's part of the information gathering phase. As a committee, I don't necessarily have that information. I've never, Richard may have some of it, but so this is where we bring together information. And if there's some things that you see on these projects here that should be moved forward, we should, let's get that in, and then we'll get this thing, put together and finalized, hopefully in the next week or so. Peter Brown told me that they need to have it approved by about the 15th so that they can get all the, the ARPA forms and everything filled out for it. But
I will be fine on that.
Yeah,
we just have to get it in there so that it shows.
That's what I
movement.
figured. But if we could get any revisions done within the next, week and maybe bring it back in 2 weeks for final approval, or even next week if we could do it quickly, it doesn't matter to me. I think the bulk of this is put together. Even the part that's the timeline section on here. I mean, we could debate that all over the place, but that's not technically part of the formal approval of the CIP. That's kind of implementation of what we're going to approve. So if we approve the projects, we can actually work around with some of the timeline piece of that to make it fit to where the projects are going to be at. Actually,
So a question, and this might be for Richard a little bit more on this plan here. Some of them in here, it looks like you put Hobble Creek and Payson Degree Basin and a few of those on here, which the design and everything in it, and the funding is NRCS.
Yep.
yes.
On there. So my question then is because I don't remember, does the county have a financial tie into that? I thought, is there a match on that?
On the Hobble Creek and Payson basins?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of different parts to it. The way those NRCS programs work is they call it the Plan EA, the Plan Environmental Assessment, and the design phase. Basically, NRCS picks up the full cost of that. When we get into the actual construction part of it, then we do have a financial component to it. And off the top of my head, I don't remember the percentage, but there is a percentage that we would have as the local entity, the sponsor of it, because that's our facility that we would pick up on the construction part of it.
Okay, so we do have so the overall, when I saw these, my first thought went to that we were putting projects on here that we don't necessarily have. I guess it comes back to capital improvement plan
Yep.
versus road work plan
Yep.
versus
And there's some different
other
components.
plans that are out there. And I was wondering how some of them land on here versus land on some of our B road monies
Yep.
and, those types of
And
things.
so there's a
fourth
whole
quarter.
section at the end that's roads, that's separate from this stuff. Using the two basins, for example, on that first page, on the one that doesn't have the colors, you can see those on there, and there's 417,000 in 23. What that is, that's what we're estimating our construction match portion would be for each of those basins. At this point, it's just an estimate because we haven't got into the full design of it yet. But
Okay. Maybe I just didn't turn the pages far enough to see the.
yeah, there's a section
the-
towards the back that is roads, and another section that's parks.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's separate from all of the others.
Good.
That makes sense?
I can see that now. Yeah. Okay.
Now, the other thing that we worked into this CIP last year was realizing that it's nice that we're putting money forward to purchase these things, and it's a big capital outlay. But what we've tried to do is calculate out what we call the recapitalization of it, so that we can start putting money into there to fund the replacement of them in the future. And if we have something that's like 3 or 4 or 5 years out, we've put some money in there to start putting in to contribute towards that project that will be out there. Now that money it's being putting in essentially in a restricted place so that we could use that for the funding in the future. And that's why we're accumulating that funding so that we can have money to take care of future needs as well.
So, sorry to jump back into roads and some others. I mean, I see on the plan, well, and maybe it's in the back part of this, maybe I haven't turned far enough. The funding sources from those, did you put those in there too?
The which ones?
The funding sources?
For the roads,
Is that only on this plan?
it's on,
No,
the
it's
funding
not-
source is only on this one.
This one, not
The,
the.
the other.
This one is just your
This
schedule.
is just schedule.
Yeah,
Your schedule, and so,
we tried to get those all in here, so they should be, but it might
I see the parks.
just be saying.
And I think on the road, I don't think we specified whether it was B road money or fourth quarter,
No, we didn't.
so.
But we know that.
There's B
We
roads up here.
know where that's coming
B road and
from.
fourth quarter, so.
On a planning purpose, it'd be nice to have that, though. I mean, we've got to have it, right?
Right, and for the most part, our B road money covers our operations.
Right.
Primarily, the project side of it is coming from the fourth quarter or SRS.
Yeah.
So, now also on this list, there are some of the ones that are funded through MAG, that's the third quarter cent money.
Right.
But it goes through that MAG process, but they're on this list too, because they're the dollar amount that's involved, so.
And those are great to have on there. But
they're-
they hit us a
they're-
little
but they're-
different.
but they're
Yeah.
separate
Yeah,
on
they're
the funding
they're-
side.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the thought process was that whatever our capital projects would be, no matter what the funding source, they would be on here. And then we would have different funding sources, some being general funds, some being grants, some being, MAG, some being whatever, and we would bring those in to fund these projects. So that's how we've tried to, put these on here so that we have that information. And each year, we're cleaning it up and getting it better. As we progress, we've made a lot of progress in the last 18 months since I've been involved. Well, almost 18 months since I've been involved with it, and and from that, you guys made a whole lot of progress just bringing it together. So I think we're improving these things, and if there's improvements to the plan that we think we should be making, we're open to making implementing those as well, because we want it to be. It needs to be functional, and it needs to be understandable, and it needs to be something that we can use as our guidepost to live by and to prepare
Excellent.
for the
Good
future.
work in here. Thank you. I mean, there's good work. I can see it. I think there's some good things to look at in there that
And if
helpful.
you have specific questions, please reach out to one or all of us, and we'll try to answer those for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
this will give a lot. This is like a homework assignment.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to make it as big as possible for you, bring you back to the school days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if we have comments in here, for sure, we want to know, direction of things that you think we might want to change a little bit, whatever, before we take it to a final vote.
Right. And so the only comment that I can make on it is that I'll be looking, and I think you've probably done a lot of this already, and that is any ARPA funding stuff that can be moved forward. We need to move it forward just for design and planning purposes so that we can get it done.
Yeah.
I'll be focusing on that as much as possible. Even if it bumps, one of the questions that I'll look at, not necessarily specific to the projects, but on a timeline basis of realities of these projects getting done in the green status and the workload that it will take to do that. And that's probably going to fall a lot on Richard's staff. And so I want to see, what that looks like. That's why it's good to see this, because I can see a lot of green coming down through in different months, to get that work done. And I know a lot of it contracts out, but
And that's what I was
that's
just
the
gonna say.
key
There's-
to it right there is.
The RFP that we did for the architectural services last fall, a lot of that work goes out to those firms. So that we would have some oversight with them, but the heavy lifting would be on those architectural firms to take care of that majority of that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm sure Richard and I will have some conversations on that too, to see what that looks like. And
Yeah, and some of the projects we may want to do that aren't super critical may have to get bumped because of, bandwidth.
yeah.
To get things done, because we definitely have to work on getting the anything that's ARPA related accomplished. And I will make a comment on that. And you and I have had this conversation, Commissioner Lee, and I know Commissioner Sakovic is on board with this, but just so the public can understand that our focus is not on spending ARPA money. Our focus is spending ARPA money on things that will provide benefit to the citizens today, but more appropriately, we want to spend money on things that will have benefit for the citizens in the coming years, in the years to come, because we're setting,
Multi-generational.
yeah, we're not trying to waste money. Oh my gosh, I'd be out of here if we're just trying to waste money. But I know that we are all in the same viewpoint, that we will only do things that are for the benefit of the public now. And I mean, mostly future. There are some of the components that has to be right now, of course, taking care of the immediate needs of the COVID response, but we're laying the foundation for future success.
Well, and I appreciate that. And one of the biggest compliments I think the county as a whole received was when we were going through the bonding process, and Dave was there, and one of the analysts which was not even from our state, made the comment of, wow, you've got money here put aside, and you have money that you're putting into we call it a fund balance rainy day account, and you've got plans out, and they said that would never happen in our state. Every penny gets dried up.
Well,
And I think that was one of the biggest compliments that the county as a whole could use, because it's a planning process for the future, and it's not one. And specifically the one that he was looking at was TRCC money, because deliberately a few years ago, we deliberately said we need to have a year's supply of money in that account, because you never know what's going to happen. And because of that, when the storm did hit, we were saying we're okay. Yeah. And the bonding people were just floored that we had that. We're across the country. It was drying up.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of attitude that you're expressing there, I think it resonates with us, all three of us up here. And it's not just a bumper sticker that we put on campaign signs. It's actually something that we do, every year, and we try to find ways.
Yeah, we try to be fiscally responsible.
Right.
This has been an ongoing discussion for a solid year that I've been here. It has not changed. Look ahead and making sure that we have the resources in hand before moving forward, and making sure we have money aside.
And we're trying to push that outlook out so that we can look on and say, well, what's really out there? And we've been trying to push the departments to tell us, well, what are the real needs? So we can look at them and prioritize them and say, hey, here's what we can look at it. Maybe it's not going to fit in this through the end of this 10-year plan, but maybe it's 15 years out. But we need to be identifying those things now so that we can start planning to be able to take care of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you get any sleep the last few months putting this together, Rudy? You and Richard and our grants manager?
It's been a little tough, and I want to, and I'll be honest, I want to thank Samantha, who's our budget analyst, who's done a lot of the work in here. She doesn't want to be on camera. She was like Karen. She says, "Don't you ever nominate me for that award, because I don't want to be up there on camera."
Maybe we should have her come up and comment how she went through all of this then.
And you know what? But Samantha has been such a huge part of doing all the work, putting the Excel spreadsheets together, and taking the direction we're giving and moving it and getting it all put together. And she's fantastic. And so I just wanted to recognize her since you happened to mention that. So
thanks, Rudy. Thank you, Sam.
yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, with that, now we're finally at our agenda. So we'll go through and organize our agenda, and you'll notice that the consent agenda is empty on purpose. We will attempt to fill it. We will fill it by not holding an item on a regular agenda. So if we hold it, then that will go for discussion. If it is not held, it will go on the consent agenda, which all three commissioners have looked at and don't have any questions to hold it, so it'll be agreed to, either approved, ratified, accepted, or adopted as stated in the agenda. Those are long words. I do that every time because I know there might be people who are for the first time saying what's going on. So with that, we'll now go down through the regular agenda and look at those items and see which ones commissioners need to hold for a comment or a vote. Why don't we start with 1, regular agenda item number 1, and we'll go all the way through what I have as the second page through 17. Are there any items, Commissioners? I don't have any on those that need to be held.
I have none on those. I've gone through all the,
I have none on those as well.
None on those? Okay. So those will be moved to the consent agenda, all the 1 through 17. How about items, let's go from item 18 to 27, or 28, sorry, 18 to 28.
I'd like
We
some
do-
more additional information on 24.
24. Okay, and I think that we probably should at least have a discussion on 21. And then if we could hold 28. Any others?
I have no more.
No.
Okay. And then from items number 29 through 32, I know we need to hold number 32. Dave, are there any others? Or
29, yeah, just 29 and 32 would be the ones. we
29 and
asked for.
32? Okay. So if it's all right with the commissioners, then we will strike items number 30 and 31, and we will approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting as listed on items number 29 and 32. We okay with that?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Alice, would you go back through that?
You bet. Okay, I have us holding regular agenda items number 21, 24, and 28. And then as far as closed meetings, we are going to hold as stated, numbers 29 and 32, and striking 30 and 31.
That's what I have.
That's what I have.
Okay. So again, to reiterate, all those items that we did not hold, which Alice brought out, went on to our consent agenda to be ratified, approved, or agreed to as stated, and those have been taken care of. Is there any comments or concerns to that?
No.
No? Okay.
Nope.
Great. Let's move then to our regular agenda with the items that we held. Number 21 is to adopt an ordinance amending chapters 2, 4, 8, and 12 of the Utah County Land Use Ordinance related to the requirements associated with the farm caretaker dwellings. I know this has been some discussion for some time, and I'm wondering, Bryce or Rob?
Bryce Armstrong, Community Development Staff. Not sure how much background you want on this, but I'll give you a little summary of where we're at to date. If you recall, this was an item that was referred by the commission back to the Planning Commission a month or so ago in response to an applicant-driven text amendment that proposed to create a new type of farmstead use in the mining and grazing zone. The commission recommended an alternative amendment that utilized some of our existing ordinance provisions specifically related to farm caretaker dwellings. And so this proposal was referred back to the county planning commission. They heard that at their December meeting. The proposal expanded our current farm caretaker dwelling provision, which is only allowed in our agricultural 40 zone, to allow access to these these type of dwellings off of certain, beyond what we currently require, which is basically a paved county road. This proposal would allow for access off of unpaved county Class D roads. Also would allow access to these farm caretaker dwellings through recorded easements through adjoining properties. And so the proposal was drafted to accommodate those type of scenarios. The proposal also expanded use of the accessory dwelling units to also be utilized accessory to farm caretaker dwellings. And the proposal also eliminated the requirement that a farm caretaker dwelling only be manufactured homes, allowed them to be stick-built or traditional homes. And then there's a lot of different housekeeping items in different sections of the ordinance to kind of make that all kind of come together. And so those are kind of the highlights of it. I can answer any questions. There was a red line version provided that kind of had summaries or of each kind of proposed amendment. And then we also captured some housekeeping items that we missed, the lot and parcel thing that we're trying to catch as we go through the ordinance where applicable. So yeah, I'm here to answer any questions or.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for taking that to them and running.
I should mention
through it.
Sorry, the Planning Commission voted 4-0 in approval.
Oh, I have 5-0.
Was it 5-0?
I had 5-0.
Yeah, it was unanimous, however
Okay.
many we had there, so.
Okay.
I'll move that we adopt agenda item number 21, unless the other commissioner has a comment or two.
Well, I'll second that motion, but just my comment is I wanted to thank the community development and the planning commission for the work they did on this. I know that this took some work and that we as a commission sent this back to them last month and asked them to do work on it. And I'm really impressed at the way everyone has come together so that we can ensure property rights for the citizens of Utah County. I'm very happy with the work that was done. I think people made compromises in this process, and I just think it's very good moving forward that we were able to honor property rights as well as community development and find a solution that would work for many people. So I'll second that happily.
All right. I do have a motion and a second, and I can echo those for sure. I mean, this is a process to go through, and it was very well taken care of there. So all in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Thank you. Okay, number 24 is to approve and adopt a resolution declaring Utah County personal property as surplus and awarding the said personal property as a gift. Commissioner Sakovich, I think you held this one.
Only that this is for an extraordinary history of great service and we don't normally talk about this, but we use a gift sidearm that's been used by an officer in the sheriff's department for enormous amount of years of service, and that's why we are doing this today. I just want to emphasize the enormous amount of work that the sheriff's department provides, and theirs is not an 8 to 5 or even a 6 to 6. It's a 24/7 role that they play, and over the weekends as well. So I just want to say thank you for this individual, this gift going to Deputy Garcia, but to all the other deputies and members of our Sheriff's Department. That's the only reason I want to pause this for a second.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we adopt and approve agenda item number 27. Four, excuse me.
I will second that motion.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, number 28 is to approve and authorize the signing of a resolution to elect Commissioner Sakovich as the chair and Commissioner Gardner as the vice chair of the Board of County Commissioners of Utah County. And I just held this so that we could actually have that vote and have that taken care of, and that we are in a process of rotation so that the vice chair will be the chair, and then of course the chair will go back as just the ordinary commissioner. How's that? I just love that too. Any motion or any thoughts to that?
But my only question there is whether you want that to be effective immediately or after the conclusion of this meeting.
Well, since that's the last, and
Probably
we'll be going into closed.
Set the conclusion of today's meetings.
Okay, that's fair enough. String me along.
I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 28, effective at the conclusion of today's meetings.
So, motion, and just before we want Lee for the fantastic job that he has done as chair. He facilitates the meetings very well, is always very well prepared. Chair so much more than just this public commission meeting. They do, they do admin meetings and elected official meetings and department head meetings. And Commissioner Lee, you and Brian Vokes have done a phenomenal job this year of coordinating all of that, even through COVID. And I want to thank you for your hard work and the example that you've set for Commissioner Sakovic and I as we move forward and take our turns as commission chair. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Well, that comes to the conclusion of this portion of our meeting. We already had the work sessions. Are there any general public comment? Come on up. Come on up.
Number 19.
Come on up to the front here. Yeah, that was done on consent, so that was already approved.
Okay. Do we need signatures today or?
And Alice will take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, for signatures on that. I love those kind of comments. They're simple and easy. Especially when you say already done.
Anything else?
No. All right. Any other public comment on Zoom? No? Okay.